So here's a quick tip if you're out in the field and your rod gets wet. This is just a piece of cap rail, but it's kind of cradled down there in the middle. I'm going to take and pour a little bit of water right in the middle, just like that. I'm going to lay this whole stick in there. I've had to do this a couple times in the field because my shit got wet and it was raining and the water got in the box, and you can see that's pretty freaking wet right now. So what you do if your stick's gotten wet, you're not back at the shop, you don't have any way to put it in the oven or nothing. Get this in the holder here. So this is all soaking wet now. Just ground it out for a few, but don't let the arc start, and you'll see the moisture cook out of the flux. So I'm just going to deadhead it. It's cooking all that moisture out of the flux now. You can see it going up the rod. You can see how it's a little drier on the bottom, and just kind of slowly working the moisture out of the rod. I'll do this sometimes if it's just been rainy for a few days or whatever. But it's just slowly heating that rod up and baking all that moisture out of the flux. You can see the line on the bottom now where it's dry and working its way up. Just hold it on there for a minute, say, however long it might take, depending on how wet it is. You've seen how much I saturated this. You can see the steam coming off the rod. Just go ahead and deadhead your rod, and it'll slowly bake the moisture out of that flux for you. So just a quick trick if you're in the field and you got some wet rod, man. Just deadhead it and don't flare it up. And the heat will slowly melt that moisture. You can see the bottom part of that stick's totally dry now. That's all you got to do. And then just go ahead and break your arc off. Lay your rod back down. It's starting to get pretty hot on the end. It's totally baked all the moisture out of the flux now. So now you can turn around and run your stick. I actually, a couple times, have soaked them in a 5-gallon bucket of water just because I was out of chamfer rod, and just dipped them in a 5-gallon bucket of water so they were totally soaked. That way the flux didn't melt off so fast, and I turned the heat up quite a bit on the welder and just kind of used it for a homemade chamfering rod to cut some steel in half with. But if you got some wet rod and you're stressing it a little bit, just deadhead your stick onto the ground or your plate. Let it sit there for 30-45 seconds. It'll slowly just cook all that moisture out of the flux. So just a quick trick in case your rod gets wet. That's one way around it. Everybody be safe.